And Nikita and Ursula. Oh, cool. Tandira, neat. Hello, Tandira. Welcome. And Nikki and Ursula, welcome.
Hello, nice to see you. I hope you're doing okay.
Oh, good. I mean, again, I can only speak from our experiences and our points of view. I think those words, as far as pinning them down, is extremely, extremely difficult because everybody has different perceptions and meanings for those words in their own mind, and it tends to vary from east to west, as in the areas of the country that I've noticed, as well as who's playing, as well as age groups. So I think you've got like a really hard task here that you've set yourself. It can be very difficult to actually pin those words down, which is why I think so many BDSM and lifestyle writers tend to actually have a glossary at the beginning of their books to say, this is how I'm defining this. And don't worry about what you think it is, this is how I define it. And I think that's probably very helpful because those words can be so ambiguous, sorry.
And fluid.
And fluid, yeah. For us, the fact that we call ourselves mistress, slave to the outside world doesn't really have a lot of bearing on us. I mean, that's how we are, but we don't really care what other people's definitions are of what that is to them. We have definitions of what that means to us, and that's really all that matters. You know, a way of labeling ourselves is just a way to come to common ground to the outside world when we're discussing our relationship, but I don't think that they'll ever really understand it because they're not in the relationship with us, you know, and each relationship I think is so specific to each person that even if you all call yourself the same thing, if you all call yourself, you know, master slave or whatever, it can be completely different from one couple to another.
Right. Right. Well, we, and I agree. And we did, in the book, we made sure that there was a glossary so that there was a common understanding of the usage of the word for that book. And there was something that I caught that you said, Ursula, when you said that's who we are. So it still comes down to my question of using a word to say what your personality is, or using the word to say what your role is. You are mistress and slave. That's who you are. And it is also your role, which is where things get confusing because people say, you know, Bob, but you're dominant. How are you a slave? How does that work? And that's why Bob is trying to go down that path of getting a general understanding. Not really pinning the word down, but just getting a general understanding that when we say this word, out of the 12 things that it could possibly mean, you know, we're thinking the top 3 are always going to be the same. Ursula?
Actually, it's Nikita here. To speak to part of that, yes, mistress-slave is what we are, but in no way is Ursula specifically a submissive personality.
You know that.
She submits to me, not to anybody else. So she is still quite dominant, and I hope we didn't just lose you because your video is spinning around there.
Well, we're frozen.
Oh, you're better now.
Okay.
Go ahead. Where did you hear me stop?
Just to the very beginning.
You just had started.
Okay. So Ursula is not generally a submissive person. She submits to me, period. So in her dealings with other people, she may come across as very dominant as well.
Which you know.
So I think that, you know, in my head, I often see, you know, master slave, mistress slave, whatever you want to call that, are who you are. They're the role you take on in a particular relationship. And in fact, you're not a slave if you are not in service to somebody, and we just lost you again. So.
Not on our side.
that's a big one for debate.
Yes, of course it's a big one for debate. That's why I said from my perspective, master-slave are, if you're a slave to somebody. You are desiring to be a slave if you are not in service to somebody in that role, but you are not slave. Because until you're in that role, you're not in that role. Whereas your personality can be dominant, submissive, a mixture of the two. Often it's going to be a mixture of the two because everybody's going to interact differently between who they're interacting with. I might be less dominant with interacting with a particular person than I am interacting with another person.
I'm the same way. I find there's a few select people that I'm much more submissive around in my personality, and I notice the switch over right away. And there are some other people in the world that I feel that towards, and it's very interesting when that happens to me.
I guess where I'm going with this is that it's back to the reason that we've ended up writing two series of books, one on BDSM mastery and one on master-slave mastery. And that is that I view the BDSM path as clearly a dominant submissive path, but I am not so clear about the master-slave path. It seems to me that that's a path of service and obedience, where the core value of love is downplayed in favor of terms such as service and, in fact, obedience. In addition to the issue of the scope of authority that master has over slave versus dom has over submissive. The thing of it is that when you get to MS, I'm more inclined to use the S word as subordinate instead of submissive. And I'm more inclined to think of this as any kind of corporate structure or monastic structure or organized structure where you have people that simply have more authority than you and they have authority over you. And in that sense, you're a subordinate in service, and whether or not your personality is dominant or submissive is incidental. Comments?
I actually agree. When people ask, you know, are you dominant or submissive, boy, do they get an answer. It's, well, I have a dominant personality. I am master within our relationship. What else do I tell them? I suppose I can be submissive. I'd
like to see that one.
I could possibly be submissive to the right person.
Officer.
Well, absolutely. I'll honor everybody, whether they have a submissive personality. I don't feel as though I have any right to be bossy or bitchy or anything to anybody else. I will be respectful to everybody. So I don't know why it's important to have these labels, other than, as Ursula said, it's just a way of finding a common ground.
Go ahead, Ursula. Nikita?
Yeah, so you're talking about the difference between MS and BDSM, master, slave, dominant, submissive, but you defined the difference. Therefore, you've created the glossary for the conversation, and I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, I'm in a master-slave relationship within the non-leather community, the non-leather path, but I am still master of somebody who happens to be a dominant person. Mm-hmm. And they are a slave to me, but not to other people. Mm-hmm. I run into a lot of people in interactions through internet communications that happen to fall under that, you know, weird umbrella that some people call switch. But, you know, in this case, they're a person who happens to be dominant to certain people and may or may not be master to them, but then also happens to be slave and or submissive to somebody else. So not necessarily switching in the same relationship, but actually, dominant in certain relationships and slave or submissive, but not necessarily submissive. It may be, as you've defined, master and subordinate, master-slave, even though they do not see themselves as following anything to do with regular leather lifestyle or the leather path.
I agree.
Bruce and I, we tend to have an affinity for the leather path, so it doesn't really fully apply. We may not consider ourselves leather, but we certainly have an affinity for that path.
Well, the difference, the thing that switched me over from submissive to slave was surrender. That was surrender to mistress was what switched me over to slave.
Yeah, excellent.
In my mind. And that was just, that was everything. She has the final word for everything, and that's...
Which is a really nice thing. Just saying.
Andy, go ahead.
I was going to support that direction. Is we're very much, our relationship is very much, didn't start in leather. We started in the BDSM world, but we've gained an affinity towards the leather community, I think, because of a better understanding in the leather community of the terms, concepts of a power slave or a slave who is dominant and things like that. So it's been our interaction with the leather community that's helped us to better understand our relationship and why it's different than other MS labeled relationships that in the community that we originally started in. But I sometimes, Bob, I do, when you say the people that came down the leather path, I cringe a little bit because I didn't come down the leather path.
And neither did we.
But at the same time, that's where I am more comfortable now, is with people of the leather path.
I'd say the same thing. That both you and Nikita are expressing what we would express also when pushed. I'm just trying to, in an effort, I'm probably being a little seeming to draw too much of a line in order just to break the conversation open. I would like to share with you some material, though, that we picked up at South Plains Leatherfest this last year from Master Stephen. And I'd never heard this.
No, that was the Gwyn Bash.
Oh, it was the Gwyn Bash. You're right. It was the. Oh, I've got it wrong I've got it wrong in my citation then. Oh, I've got it wrong. I got to go fix that. Not right now, but I have to go fix it. Yeah, Master Stephen was at the Gwyn Bash, and I'll have to. If any of you are interested, I'll send this to you because I've written it out. I happen to have been working on it today. But he's talking about alpha personalities and beta personalities. What he's saying is an alpha personality wants to get things done, and a beta personality wants to do things. So if you combine this, watch. Just watch. I've worked on separating it.
All right.
It's not what you'd said.
Not what I said.
I know that. I got it separated differently. So what, because I have this handout, I have an edge.
It doesn't matter.
So yeah, he's saying if you got an alpha master, just get out of the way. If you got a master with an alpha master, that person wants to do everything themselves. Just get out of the way and let it be done. If you have a beta submissive, they just want to, a beta slave, I mean, if you have a beta personality with the slave, and this is not talking about an alpha slave and a beta slave, which is a different discussion. This is an alpha personality and a beta personality. So if you have a beta personality, you just want someone to tell you what to do. So when you've got an alpha master with a beta slave, you have a standard DS structure in the BDSM sense of that pairing. However, in the leather, on the leather side of it, on the other side, you more frequently have a beta personality master who simply wants it done and will assign the task to whomever can do it best, tied to an alpha, a personality slave who wants to get things done. And so that, in Master Stephen's conceptualization, and one that I am growing to like, says, okay, one of the signal differences between the leather culture MS and the BDSM culture MS is that on the BDSM side, you have an alpha paired to a beta, an alpha master paired to a beta S-type, and on the leather side, you have a beta master tied to an alpha S-type.
That doesn't mean that the beta master can't get things done.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
It just means that they'll recognize that
they're more a leader who delegates.
Yeah.
It's a leader delegator model instead of the leader doing all of it model.
It's pretty out there.
Just saying.
What do you think?
I can, by the way, scan the handout and send it to you.
Andy.
Yes, Andy.
To a certain extent, I agree. I think very much that when you're looking at from when you adventure into the more leather-based MS, or sometimes I even differentiate between leather and just MS, and I like to refer to it as just MS, and then there's leather MS and BDSM MS, and then
I'll go along with that.
You move into a leadership role, a more leadership role and guide and less micromanagement, a lot more delegation. Because I think if you and this is where sometimes I have the issue with the leather, is in our leather community, there's very much a very similar concepts as far as master and slave when you're at the more, I'd hate to differentiate, but more introductory levels or more exploratory levels of master and slave. What I find in a lot of cases is that people learn and build trust in your relationship through doing the more traditional or the more DS-based master and slave, where the dominant is commanding, more micromanaging, and you're building trust in your relationship. As your relationship evolves, it can go more to a leadership more style as you build that trust in your relationship.
That's very good. I'd say I agree with all of that.
I've got to get something.
Uh-oh. Master's running away.
Okay, talk about the movie and the quote.
Movie?
The movie that we just saw with
oh, I can't do the quote.
I'm getting the quote.
Oh,
talk about the
Master's running out and getting quotes. We recommend two movies to you guys if you have not seen them. One is the Theory of Everything, and that's the Stephen Hawking story. And the other that is just fascinating. They're just both amazingly good. The other is about Alan Turing and essentially the creation of the first computer used to counter that was developed during World War II to break the Enigma machine of the Germans. And in that movie, it is called The Imitation Game. There's a quote, and that's what she's run to get.
Okay, so they said this quote 4 times in the movie. The first time I heard it, I said, well, that's really interesting. I like that quote. The second time I heard it, I said, I think there's a problem here with this quote. By the 4th time that I heard it, I figured out what the problem was. The quote is, sometimes it is the people who no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. It's really a lovely quote. sometimes it's the people who no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. And I said, okay, wait a minute. As I was raising children, and with all of my relationships, I set the bar really high. I expect a lot from these people in my life, which gives them no place to go. They can't surprise me. They can't do anything special because I expect it. So then it took the conversation to when we first started doing presentations together and having this little girl say, I don't feel that Master notices me anymore. And I said, here's the problem. When you're in a new relationship, you're learning, you have a lot of room to go, and you're growing. And Master is saying, what an amazing job you're doing. You've learned this new skill, and you're getting a lot of attention. Interaction within the relationship, and it's feeding both of you. However, once you've learned everything, and this is where we say the work really begins, but once you've learned everything, then you're not getting fed those good job, because we're not noticing that you're doing something over and above your expectation. You're just meeting expectation.
And the learning everything is really learning what Master wishes. So you have a honeymoon period where Master is being less exacting than Master might wish to be because the slave is new. But once slave has learned everything, then you're faced with the reality that this is what you got.
So with what Master Andy just said is that, as you are learning each other and you have more structure to your relationship, you come to a plateau, which then if you keep going is where the different relationship style, which is what we're calling master-slave, happens.
Yeah, that works for me.
Pretty good, huh? All from a movie. Okay.
I've run out of topics.
No, we have the books.
What are you going to do about those? They've never even seen the books.
Oh, well, just in case you guys didn't know, for the last 2 years we've been writing.
Okay, so who wouldn't know? HypnoFun would not know, and
everybody knows.
Diamond.
Everybody knows. So we've been writing, and as we were writing, the books evolved into 2 different series. We have the BDSM Mastery Series and the Master-Slave Mastery Series. And it's going down this path that we've been talking about tonight, is trying to pin down specific definitions of words and saying, well, if you behave this way and structure your relationship this way, you might be more this, or if you might be more that. Now, we had a little struggle within our relationship about this actual point because I didn't think you should make those distinctions, but we have, and it's now in print and available.
Well, we also start these books out with an announcement to readers. So if you guys ever end up with these books, you'll see that I am speaking to readers, and what I say is there are 2 troubling First, some readers will read only part of the book, focus on the points they object to, and then speak widely about how this writer doesn't have a clue about how things are really done, rather than read through the whole material with an eye to adapting concepts and ideas that speak to them. Second, written words lock an author's thoughts into place in people's minds. Authors get associated with certain viewpoints, and it can be challenging to get previous readers to understand that you, the author, have broadened your understanding of a topic over the span of years, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, we write it down, and we hope that that people will give us the latitude to change.
I heard a sound, but I don't see that there's a sound.
Somebody must have fled from the room.
Nikita and Ursula have a different symbol at their name.
That's it. They do.
So
I don't have a whole lot else to say on these topics. I'm happy to take up another, oh, hi, Cokes. I'm happy to take up another topic.
well, I figured you would now talk about some things that were in the books and
oh, well,
like
I'll tell you what I'm doing now. The new book that I'm, the fourth book in the series, the second book in the Master-Slave Mastery series, is a compilation, not only, it's probably 40% my own ideas, and then 60% they're ideas that I've gleaned from listening to presenters such as with us that that I can put in to broaden my own base. So it's really a collection of comments from the workshops I've attended since about 2008 from master-slave presenters, all nicely cited, so long as I can remember who's. In most cases, I can cite the person. When I can't, and I know that it comes from somebody, I put a little note in there that's saying, if you said this, please contact me, and I'll cite you in the next edition of it. So I don't mean to take credit for anybody else's words. But it's becoming a very interestingly, the book's interesting for me to write because you have so many different views, different approaches to MS, that every time I get into a section, I find that I'm sort of speaking from this point of view, and then next paragraph, I'm speaking from the other point of view. So the leader-follower approach is going to be different than the me-Tarzan approach, which is different than some other approach. And I'm trying to keep all of these approaches alive throughout the entire manuscript, which is, it's a lot of fun. I'm having fun doing it. What am I going to say? We may just stop the session. Anybody want to visit?
Well, I think when he's writing this fourth book, every once in a while there are giggles that come from the other side of the room.
Oh, sure. No, I'll write things down, and then I'll start to write a paragraph about how I do or don't agree with it. It's just, I'm just having a lot of fun with it.
But what's interesting is that when you look at all of the different ways of having a relationship, and you look at what we've done in our relationship, we've pulled a little bit from this and a little bit from that, and we don't fit solidly into one style. We might be a little stronger going down one path, but we've definitely pulled a little bit from every different style. And I think that that's good to be able to do that and to talk about that.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you, Jen. I think you do fit one style exactly perfectly, and it's the Jen and Bob style.
Yes,
you know,
that's very true.
You know, I mean, speaking on that, you know, I have my other girl who's in Belgium, who's actually coming out here very shortly. She'll be out here February 10th for a couple of weeks. But she's started a relationship in Belgium that is not power exchange. They tend to just take on the role of dominant submissive between the two of them, depending on what type of play scene they want to do. So that, that's a very different relationship. So she's still okay because she's still mine, so she's my slave, but she's in this relationship with another person where I term it more top-bottom, although they do try and bring a little DS into it sometimes. So, but there's certainly no MS involved.
They're playing. They're having
They're
fun.
playing, yes.
Yeah.
So.
Is February 10th a Tuesday by any chance?
It is, yes.
Because that's Master Andy's hosting that evening. It's part 2 of his
Oh, fabulous.
navigating the waters of turbulence in a relationship that he did the second Tuesday in December. He and Sue.
Oh, interesting. That might be.
Great.
We'll make her stay awake. She just got off a 10-hour flight, but she arrives at about 3 o'clock our time. So, you know, we'll give her time to eat dinner and unpack, and then we'll come in and stick her on. So.
Well, although Sir Dragon Z, Brian out in Victoria doesn't know it, we bounced him out of that slot on the 10th of February. I was going to tell him if he'd been on tonight, but I'll have to email him.
We were speaking with him about maybe 2 weeks ago, not that long, and he was talking about some difficulties that he's having in his relationship, and it's right along the same thing of this quote. They've gone along so far, and now she's saying, but you don't notice me anymore. I'm not special to you anymore. We're out and about, and back in the day, I used to be your focus, and now I'm not. And so we said, you know, this is something that we need to bring up for discussion.
We're going to do a round table. We're going to do a round table. So if Nikita and Ursula, if you'd like to be on the round table, and
anybody,
Master Andy, well, I know that you guys are capable of handling that in a round table, in a conference level. If you're interested in doing that, the issue really it has a lot to do with how to keep the relationship fresh and how to keep your perspective that even though you well, I'll leave it at that.
No, I have good thoughts on that, actually.
So we'll make her save them.
Yeah.
Until the round table.
I'll have to write them down so I don't forget them.
Unfortunately, the next opening we have is out in May or something ridiculous. When we put out that call for people to come and be guests, we were just absolutely flooded. I had no idea it was going to get a response like that.
There's some really good topics coming up.
Really interesting, but we just got filled up immediately.
But we can always pull this up in case there's a change in the schedule too. Mm-hmm. But I think it comes back to that little girl in that first presentation that I was present for, who just said, she's in tears, and she's saying, I just don't think he cares anymore. He doesn't notice anymore. And it's talking to that. It's, you know, we get caught up in our everyday and we forget to turn around and say, gosh, I really appreciate you, whichever side of the slash you live on.
Mr. Andy?
And not to take this topic too far down the road too quickly, or before you do it, but I think I think that's one of the things that comes out of the community people that came in through BDSM more than it comes from the leather side, because I think the leather path in my perspective, I think the love-based relationships have a bigger problem with that than the non-love-based relationships.
I completely agree with you.
But I think we can have that discussion. That will fit well in that discussion.
I completely agree with you.
You should say, because it's shocking, and we're talking about, you know, things that pinning things down, you should talk about the what you derived from gay, master-slave, weekend, and love. Do I need to give you more than that? Okay, so you'll have to jump in as soon as it sparks your memory. So Bob said, okay, so you have gay leathermen who they're in a leather bar, and the slave comes up and says, I will be your slave, take me home, master, do anything that you want.
Well, I think this is actually how the concept of contract started. I don't know if I've shared this before with you guys or not. I think the whole concept of contracts grew out of bar scenes, where in the 40s and 50s, where the boy would go up to this big stud and say, take me home, I'm your slave, do whatever you want to me. And they'd go home and they'd play around and then they'd leave. But over time,
maybe they
wouldn't leave. And my sense of this is absolute conjecture, just guessing. my guess is pretty soon some of these big Leathermen started to say, hold on here, bucko. You're not staying around. Let's talk about the terms under which you're staying around with me and doing this master-slave stuff. And I think that's how the concept of contract started for MS.
I think it's a cool idea.
I think it was protection. The master started this as protection for master.
Sounds interesting. And then he went down the love path. He said, you know, it wasn't a love.
Love had nothing to do with it.
It was, let's go home and have wild sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just a guess. I'll have to say this at a leather conference sometime and see who kills me.
See how many gasps. Oh, did you hear what Rubel said? Funny.
Okay, anybody else?
The boy is shaking his foot.
Boy is anxious. He's running out of topics.
Well, then, this is Andy. Watching the gay community nowadays with the legalization of marriage, and you're seeing a lot more of the loving-based relationships, MS relationships happening in that community as well, and as far as what I'm noticing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, they've got, and also again, I can't remember whether or not I've done this in a workshop in our webinars or not, but I suspect that the emphasis on protocols in the leather community grew out of the maturation of a subculture. So translating that, when you get and stop me somebody if I've done this before, would you? Because I don't want to do it again if you've all heard it. But the same way that yes, Andy? Okay. In the same way that when you get a bunch of accountants, when you had accountants starting up in the world, when you had attorneys starting up, when you had people that specialized in some field, any field starting up, they eventually decided that they had to exclude others from competition. So they developed credentialing requirements. So now to become a CPA, a doctor, within the range of doctors, to become an OB-GYN or an audiologist, you have credentialing exams. My sense is that all of this, that the emphasis on protocols began in the leather community as a keeping out. It began as a way of differentiating those that were sort of already there from those that were trying to come in. And particularly, by the way, I think it was a way of keeping out the non-gay kinksters that were trying to find out what this leather was all about. And the Leathermen were saying, were making things up. They were saying things like, well, you can't just come in here, you know, and there's a certain way that you have to do things. And
you have to start from the bottom.
You have to start from the bottom. You have to do this, you have to do that. There's a secret handshake, there's a special code. And that's how a lot of the I believe, this is just a guess, but there's so many parallels to this. But the began as a way of that Leatherman had of excluding those that weren't in their particular sandbox.
And the problem is that, as Ursula said earlier, the problem is that it wasn't something that happened all the way across the world. Right. It happened just in this little area, And these people over here are saying, well, that's just crap because that didn't happen. That wasn't part of our experience. And so some people are going to say, well, yeah, the only way to come into leather is you had to come in as a slave to a master and you had to learn your way up and earn your leathers and all of that. And somebody in the next town over is saying, well, that wasn't my experience.
Yeah, and I go over all of this stuff over all the years. My publisher was a guy named Herbert Mosley. And Herbert had been a Leatherman now. He's 4 years older than I am. But he's been a Leatherman now, I guess, something like 55 years. And he ran IML for 2 years. And he's part of Chuck Renslow's extended family. And for those of you that aren't in this particular subculture, Chuck Renslow is the person that started the Chicago Eagle Club, and he was the owner of Gold Coast Leather, Gold Coast Bar, and he's the owner of International Mr. Leather. And Herbert said one time, Chuck's never been given a piece of leather in his life. He bought his cap, he bought his vest, he bought his boots, he bought his pants. This is just silliness. And when I started writing this BDSM book, and I was trying to explain leather, and I gave it to David Stein to run through and edit. And I'd gone along and I was repeating the myth. And David Stein, and for those of you that don't know the name, he's the author of the book Ask the Man Who Owns Him, which was it's a book of interviews with 25 gay MS couples who have been in their structure more than 10 years. And he's also the person who originated the phrase safe, sane, and consensual. So he's been around a long time. So I send this book off to David, and David vomits. And I've known David for years. And he said, well, this is silly. I said, earning your leathers, don't be ridiculous. What would happen would be you'd go out and you'd buy a cap, and if nobody teased you about it too much, you got to wear it. And I went to Herbert, and I said, Herbert, this is what David's saying. Is this right? He said, well, of course. I said, well, where's all this myth come up? And I'm just telling you. I think the myth grew up as a way of differentiating themselves from those that weren't part of their little play group. End of story. In certain areas.
Mm-hmm. Sort of interesting. And it's sort of still under the same topic of definitions of words.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So. But we managed to make a 20-minute conversation last 47 minutes.
I'm inclined to pack it in.
We thank everybody for being here. If anybody has anything to say about the topic on word definitions and anything, the floor is open.
Or if you would like to suggest topics or guest presenters for us in the future, I'll certainly take notes. I have capability of taking notes. Hearing no second, the motion dies by, we'll say good night. Thanks very much for coming.
Next time?
Next time we have Slave Namaste and Nurse V, and they're going to be talking about gratitude. And the time after that, we have Master Andy.
It's going to be really, really good conversations coming up.
So I hope that you'll all come back and join us. Oh,
we didn't tell them about our lovely building website.
Oh, yeah. We're having a lot of fun with our website. It's kinkmastery.com. And it's going to, we have a local kinkster who's decided that it's going to be fun to do this. And so he's just volunteering his time to do it. It's quite amazing. At any rate, it's coming along, but we have high hopes for it. We'd like to be able to include all kinds of free writings, essays, articles. We're going to link it to my old fetish photography site, so we're going to be offering fetish images that we will rotate through. How many?
I'm doing about 5 to 9 every 10 days. So there'll be new pictures, new reasons to come back and see what's going on. Also articles. We're dividing the site into 3 sections. So you have your BDSM kink, so that's going to have skills, BDSM type play stuff. You have your master slave, which is going to be mostly relationships, communication stuff. And then the sexuality, which is, you know, in Bob's case, pussy stuff.
That would be right.
We'll try to find other stuff in there. We'll get the sexuality stuff for other people who aren't just pussy people.
Diamanda, anything that you'd like to say? John, did you want to add anything? Cokes?
Otherwise?
Any comments before we shut it down?
All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay, Ava, you can take it off. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming, everybody.